Facebook would like to get your permission to record your tracking of data from different websites and apps that you use so we can deliver personalized messages and advertisements to you. Now, look, I'm not a genius, but I think if I got a notification saying that, I'm definitely going to say no. So let's jump into it. What are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about, as you saw in the title, Facebook versus Apple. This is big. This is really big, and people are really downplaying it in hopes that something might come out of this. And there's a lot of information out there, so I wanted to really break down what exactly this is, why it might affect you, me, and everyone else around the world, because it is a big deal. So now let's just jump into it. Let's kick off from the fact that what exactly is happening. Apple's introducing a new privacy policy notification that basically asks users to provide consent for people to go ahead and get information. By people, I mean app developers. This is not something new. We've been providing consent as users for the longest time by clicking on the OK button, saying yes to terms and conditions. But Apple's getting a little more deliberate with this. And no one's right or wrong here. I just think they're both act like they care about everyone, but they don't. This is just a war play, and we're sort of in between what's happening. I use a horrible example that it's by no way either of them are as righteous, but it's like, the Civil War, it's Captain America versus Iron Man, except the opposite, and we're just in between trying to deal and watch what happens. So let's talk about what exactly is going on. So Apple's basically releasing this thing called AppTracking Transparency as part of the new privacy policy release. That essentially means that we as users, or anyone that's using Apple phones, need to go ahead and provide consent to anyone that wants to grab any tracking information when that information is being used by these third-party providers or app developers to track a user's activity across various websites and apps. This is mainly used to go ahead and provide information to these engineering teams to make your experience more personalized and better for you, and in some cases deliver advertising that is personalized and geared towards you. For example, if you're into barbecues, you might not want to see things that you're not interested in. That might be something about water bottles or skiing if you live in the middle of a desert, for example, right? So personal advertising are good, in my opinion, to some extent, but they can get a little creepy, as we all know. If you're speaking to someone or a friend, and suddenly Facebook starts delivering advertisements for you. So we'll jump into exactly how that happens, so you actually figure out magic behind all of this. Now, before we go too deep into the policy, to get things straight out, what Apple is basically saying is you can track stuff, but just not across different apps. That's where we draw the line. Now, Facebook is coming back saying you're hurting small business and you're hurting everyone in this industry. Almost 22 million businesses advertise on us, and as a result of this, you're going to see an economic downturn because we don't get personalized information with respect to how we can deliver ads to you. Just to note, Facebook's obviously gone off the limb and said, as a result of this, we're going to see a 60% drop in cost efficiency when you're trying to deliver something of value. So something that would have cost $1 is going to cost people significantly more, 60% less effective in terms of delivering quality ads to end users. So why is this? What exactly does Facebook do to track information? Why is Apple being the way it is? Let's speak about that. Lo and behold, as we all know, Facebook makes money through tracked advertising. Now, you don't need to be an advertiser, but I'm going to break it down very easy to you. If you are an advertiser watching this video, you most likely know what I'm talking about, but maybe I can share a thing or two. So Facebook basically has an process where they deliver ads to you based upon your user behavior, right? So they deliver cold ads to you, and this is different from Google, which we'll talk about in a quick second. So the way Facebook essentially operates on an advertising level is we have something called a campaign, which is, are you trying to get awareness for a particular product, brand, blah blah blah? Are you trying to get people to buy? And Facebook's actually figured out a way, because they've got so much information on which type of user might most likely convert to a purchase, or who might comment on a certain thing or leave an angry message or just spread some brand awareness for you. On the other side, then you've got something called an Adset. An Adset is targeting. So for example, if you're selling skis, you most likely want to target people who are into snowboarding, who live in a winter cold area or near snowy mountains, and so on and so forth. The last thing on the subset of how Facebook advertising works is something called the ad, or what most people refer to as creatives. Creatives are basically what you end up seeing as the ad itself, which is an image, a text message, a video, whatever it may be. How this essentially operates is Facebook goes ahead, you as a marketer, you provide a budget. If you're doing campaign budget optimization is what it's called, a CBO, and tell Facebook, look, I want to target these people who are interested in these kind of things, and I want you to show them these kind of creatives or images or videos. Can you please do that? And then can you optimize so that I get the best bang for my buck for what I'm trying to achieve, whether that's conversion, awareness, blah, blah, blah. Now, what this whole privacy policy issue does is not affect Facebook on one area of its advertising, which is I think would be maybe 10-20% of its main advertising model. It affects it on the 80 percentile, which is kind of where Facebook makes most of its money. Ads on Facebook are delivered in two ways. One way they deliver it is basically I set an interest saying I think these people are going to be interested in, because they're interested in snowboarding, they might be interested in skiing. So I'm going to set a target audience. I know who I want to target. So that part of it is fine because it's on Facebook. The area where Apple is basically saying you cannot work with us anymore, or we're not going to give you the relevant information you need, is pertaining to something Facebook refers to as retargeting or pixel-based event targeting. What does that mean? So retargeting is basically why when you go to a website, suddenly your Facebook feed is filled with similar things. Now for that, I'll explain what exactly a pixel is. If you're a marketer, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not, pay attention because it will be important for you to understand. Now, different websites, basically, Facebook released a pixel a couple of years ago saying, look, you install this tiny snippet of code, and whenever a user performs a certain action, we will alter their Facebook feed to show relevant information, so maybe you can catch them after purchase. It's the equivalent of when you go to a restaurant and then they collect your details, maybe phone number, and call you a couple of weeks later saying, hey, we've got an offer, do you want to come back? Making it easy for you. What marketers, founders, and people selling products on the internet can do is based upon the behavior you perform on their website. Maybe you've scrolled through their website, clicked on a bunch of products, maybe purchased something. They can show you different information. So that's essentially what we would refer to as retargeting. Sometimes you add something to your cart, you want to purchase, but you don't. So Facebook lets you go ahead and target people who've added certain products to carts, saying, hey, it looks like you forgot something. Why don't you go ahead and finish the purchase, right? Retargeting to some way. And you can retarget on multiple levels. People who visited the website, people who've seen your Facebook advertising, people who've seen your Facebook video for a certain extent, people who've done certain actions on your website. It's a big part of it. The other segment of Facebook advertising refers to something as, it's behavioral economical condensation. That means you're taking lumps of people, so you're creating cohorts of individuals, and you're trying to find, or you're extrapolating their behavior to other people who might possess similar behavior. So what Facebook does is one of their more powerful features is called lookalike audiences. And what that essentially means is maybe you find a set of people or customers who come to a website, maybe they purchase. You want to find more of those people, as anyone who's running a business does. Now, in a traditional business, it's hard for you to figure out, okay, why did this person buy certain products? Why did this person buy certain products? You want to try find cohorts of those individuals and say, okay, what attributes of them can I find in someone else's attributes? Is it because they like hockey? Is it because they like sports? Is it because they're male and 7 feet tall? Is it because they're female and 8 feet tall? I don't know, right? But Facebook knows these things. So what Facebook lets you do is go ahead and build cohorts of audiences of behaviors that you like. So you can say, all right, Facebook, I've got about 100 people who bought my product. Go find me a bunch of other people like these people who might buy my product. And that's where majority of money is made in advertising, is the lookalike audience environment, because you're trying to find people who are most likely to engage with a certain segment. So you got Facebook ads running in two phases. The first phase is you sort of run ads to a market, set some testing, you're trying to see who's going to buy, and then you spend a bunch of money in the testing trial period. You most likely will be hopefully positive, sometimes a little negative, and then you get some data saying, okay, we've got a bunch of people who might buy my product. And the second phase is, all right, let me go ahead and actually find more people. Say, Facebook, go get me more people who've done this desired action or behavior, and then let me sell to them. That's where the Facebook pixel comes in. And that's why, because you're tracking user behavior and you're using the pixel to go ahead and help people make the purchase or make more customers happier through your product, right? Now, the dispute that basically comes in, right, is there's something called identifier for advertisers. It's a policy that was introduced by Apple, and it's a technological restriction that they put in. Now, what IDFA basically says and does is it prevents individual information. That means Facebook can go ahead and find out if someone on a particular device has done X, Y, and Z, but it cannot actually understand and know who did that. And Apple made sure of that in their initial policies. So that still stands, right? So IDFA basically is trying to say that, look, you will find out who on a certain device or behavior has done something, but we will not tell you the actual email address of that person. And that's what the IDFA is, and that's kind of what the whole sort of drama around has sort of come under. There's actually something called a DMA, which is the Digital Marketers Act, It's basically in the EU, it's a legislation that allows people, or essentially is going to allow Facebook to sort of play and pull a few strings and at least help Apple be a little nicer towards Facebook when it comes to advertising. This whole game comes around identification, identity, and personal verification of information. So which is why I said, if you're doing cold-based targeting, you're just targeting based upon email addresses, you're kind of good to go. But you're doing the retargeting space, which is kind of where all the money is, to some extent, you can't, or at least Facebook will be restricted, or most app developers will be restricted. From what I can hear and done research on, because the space is really convoluted, is Apple will still let you do a certain set of events. They're limiting it to 8 events that you can basically send out, and anything more than that might require some extra permission. So it's not all bad, but it is kind of bad at this point in time. So where does that leave us with this whole thing? Facebook is a predominant advertiser and they make money through that. A lot of businesses actually do make money through it, but we all know as consumers, we can get quite manipulated because of what Facebook does to us. So we are just in between, like I said from the beginning, where Apple's introducing this privacy policy process to protect us. But we all know that Apple have done some pretty dodgy things in the past as well. Facebook is coming in at this saying we're protecting small businesses, which is yes and no, but if you actually go through Facebook's privacy policy, you're going to be scrolling for days on end because there's so much information they sometimes capture. I mean, Apple cannot sit here saying that they care for the audience and the user because, as some of you may or may not know, anyone who launches an app on the Apple Store and gets money through payments, provided they're not physical products, Apple actually charges 30% of all transactions that go through Apple. And they've been criticized quite heavily for this because it's a significant chunk of money and profit. Imagine 30% of your money being taken continuously just because they provide an ecosystem for you. Now, Apple did say that they're going to cut that down by 15%, I think next year or so, for people making less than $1 million a year. So basically, if you're making less than $1 million, you get $1 million. Anything more than that, 30% cut off. For people less than $1 million, it's 15%. So where does this leave us after all this information that you've gathered in terms of what's happening, and hopefully some sort of education in terms of how Facebook and Google work, or sorry, Facebook and Apple work with respect to their targeting and so on and so forth? Is Apple's introducing this process, Facebook is going to contest it. I don't think Facebook's going to win because there's just not much legs that they have there. The Apple is trying to protect its customers by simply saying, look, we're trying to be as lenient as possible. We'll give you the relevant information that you need, but not more, right? You're not going to get the actual identity of the information of the particular user. I think that's fair. The issue comes down in that consent screen. That consent screen is pretty bad, right? And this is where the IDFA sort of process has come in, right? Is in the end, we all understand that Apple has restricted to get personalized information and sell it to places like Facebook and so on and so forth. And that's kind of what's been happening all along. But the messaging is quite jarring because the messaging basically says, look, these people are going to take your information and sell it basically and target you with personalized ads. Do you want it? I don't think a lot of people are going to say yes to that. And the way to go ahead and revoke that is, it's really poor user experience. You go do it in the settings, etc., etc. So we're going to see a large percentage of people, in my opinion, who are going to say, yep, I don't want to share my information, right? If Apple does change the messaging a bit, maybe just go with something a little more fairer and cleaner, saying, look, these people are going to capture information to make your experience better on third-party websites. Do you want to go ahead and do that? And they're going to make it better through personalized ads, blah, blah, blah. Maybe yes. That's something to consider. Now, where does this leave the entire digital marketing, online growth space? What happens? We're not too sure. We'll find out very soon. I don't think it's completely bad. In the end, it just makes Facebook a better place for us to go ahead and use as consumers. But at the same time, depending on how strict Apple gets, it can get a little difficult for all of us. Next point to mention is, where does this mean with respect to where we go in terms of advertising? I don't think there's nothing in terms of us. It just you're always going to see restrictions, you're always going to see changes, and we just need to adapt as people who are trying to build businesses and the way we tend to advertise and grow. That can be content marketing, Google, because I think Google is a fantastic place to be. It's fairly untapped for what it actually is, because a lot of people just don't understand how Google advertising works. And it's honestly a lot better because Google is search-based advertising and people are already looking for it, and you're just sort of showing them with a better option. Versus with Facebook, it's sort of smack bang cold advertising. I never asked for it, but it's going to show it to me. So that's where we are with all of this. this is what is actually happening to what we are aware of right now. I'll keep rolling up updates as they come through, and I just thought I'd make this quick video to walk you through what exactly is going on the battle between Apple versus Facebook. If you've liked this, please feel free to comment, leave a like if you liked it, subscribe so you can see the rest of the videos that are coming through, and share it with your friends if you think it's important. Have a great day.